Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised there. Again, I've not watched the Osborne between these two much, but obviously in the first game, 39 just did not give them any opportunity to sort of get a res off and stay in the game. Shulix and Faded, though, valuing not taking the risk. They just want to stay up in the lobby, and fair play to them. They're going to let both teams survive in that instance, and that might come back to bite them if Fergie and Ein can have another game like they did in game number 1. Unfortunately, barely losing that 2v2 versus Vico Malabuka.
Anytime you make strong duo like Vico Malabuka work for it, though, just goes to show there's still plenty of talent that's looking to try and get their spot on the battle bus. For Tayson and Merstash, though, Sinister Strip has definitely been much calmer than what I would have anticipated, given that we know that there is another duo looking to try and contest part of that drop. But for right now, things heating up over at Wonky Land. Calais and Nova already taken out in the Freezy. Vanya still lurking about, though, out of sight, out of mind. But for how much longer? Because it's very evident that Nova and Calais, they definitely want to ensure that there is nobody left to stick around here in Wonky and try and play a little bit of spoiler to their game plan.
Yeah, and props to the Freezy and Vanya, both great players in their own right, but you don't want to be fighting Nova and Calais, man. These guys are very well equipped to win a fight if they are given the opportunity. We'll see how the first one was. Yeah, I mean, back against the wall from the Freezy, and Nova was ready for it.
Can be such an awkward spot to fight when you get trapped inside some of those sections over by Wonky, but other teams also trying to continue some success. Calamari Canyon obviously getting active here. Get a look back to see what went right here for Della, and Benny unfortunately just on the receiving end of things this time around. Really solid collapse by this duo, one after the other, just making it look honestly a bit easy there.
Back over to Heatwave Harbor with Rax and Janice, who we saw some impressive moments from Rax in that last game. And this time around, it looks like they're not going to have to deal with Anas and Trippin, who were causing some issues. Issues that they did handle pretty well, to be fair. Of course, they came out on top there, so that might change things for them as far as early damage goes. They might have to look for it elsewhere. Of course, one of the other duos in this area is Osku. So this fight here between Osku and Poison going to be very significant for both teams now.
Physics and Ivan, this is what they're waiting for. Ice just incredibly injured. Another example of just a duo capitalizing on attacking separate angles, but Yapko Panzer, they've decided Sinister Strip is calling their name for Merstash and Tayson. Definitely going to be a bit of an uphill battle here, contending with another pair of EU vets, but I'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, and I guess it's interesting, right? Because Tayson and Mustache in game one, we saw them having to deal with poison and gaps, but this time around, those guys aren't here at Sinister, but that doesn't mean things get any easier, because Yapko and Panzer look to infiltrate the POI instead, so we'll see whether or not there's any harmony between these two duos. I wouldn't bank on it.
Also seemed like Craig and Sanya.
Is this a clip from last game? Have they just like taken this? I swear this was the exact same situation last game. Same drone shot and everything.
Something about Sky and Scroll and having an established Surge base, plenty of loot and resources at the base of it, and one of them just securing Surge tags that they'll need for later on in this lobby. These guys just play so clinical every single time they're on screen.
Yeah, these guys have been the blueprint for the whole year now, as far as consistent gameplay goes. Azat and Dandy Puzo, we saw them going down last game, and so I think the aggression here may be trying to make up for lost time. Azat's quick with it. And the Puzo trying to just get in, both attacking. Now both looking to pinch from either side.
Problem is, both of these teams seemingly been fighting for so long, neither of them has really had the opportunity to get a whole lot of materials, burning through most of their mats, as it will have the bulk of them for time being, but still just trying to break in to where Lynx and Et are at, but things are just going to fizzle out here. Neither side really getting much of an advantage for it. Not sure how much Surge was actually built up from either of those duos. and they'll still have to contend with each other later on by the looks of things. Now, Cringe, Volko, also hanging out outside of the storm. These early storm ticks, not really much of a threat. Just looking for an opportunity to see whether or not teams are going to look to potentially try and play for those early reboots. It's always a solid method, I think, facing out inside of the storm. Bound to see at least one or two players go by, but if you don't, sometimes that patience can work against you.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the Fortnite boomer in me wants to go, you know, there's nowhere near enough traffic for you to get, you know, tags from this position, man. Like, you gotta go somewhere else. But you're right, you know, oftentimes, as long as you know there's gonna be the one team that does rotate past, if you can get a bit of damage. The problem is, I think over time, you're more likely to be anti-stratted that way, right? And so teams, especially when it comes Grands Week next week, are way more likely to prepare to just avoid you and any of your potential lines of sight. But that's a problem for next week. Let's focus on the here and now, and if it is able to get you through to the end game, you'll be more than happy to keep doing it.
Seems like Haris in pink, though, very privy to the fact that there's been a lot of action taking place at Battlewoods, and part of the repercussions for that for those teams inside of Battlewoods is other parties deciding that they want to try and build up their search from positions just outside of it. So far, though, Haris and pink largely just scouting out the area. Currently, those teams tucked away inside of the buildings. But eventually the zones will draw them out from those hideaways. And Pink and Haris are not the only duo looking to be set up for it. Darm and Deemish, bit of a quieter game one. But this is also one of those teams, Levin, that you can always expect a big impact lobby from.
Yeah, I think this is the type of team who, you know, everyone's like, okay, who are the big teams who are going to stay in the lobby all 5 games versus who's going to win a game? And Deemish and Dom always feel like a team who's just going to stick around for the ride, you know? I think they like the thrill. I'll say that now and they'll win this game.
That's how it always goes. We'll wait and see. When you have teams like Darm and Deemish that are already qualified for the Global Championship, it is a bit nice to just have opportunity to experiment, see whether some strategies are ones that you actually want to commit to when it comes around for Major 2 Grand Finals. And I know that might be speaking a bit early in terms of their standing and their current points, but definitely expecting big conversions later on as Della and Alec certainly off to a solid start here again in game number 2. Getting a look back. And it's just going to be Shaywaz, Punish, Alex, and Della. 3 eliminations is certainly on the right track. We're getting that surge completely in their favor.
We watched Trulex and Faded start this game, getting a knock onto the team they fought off spawn. They chose not to pursue the fight. And now they sit in a decent spot to play out the rest of this game. A bit more of the action from Alec in his fight.
A lot of idle basing, though, seems to be the current theme for some of these earlier lobbies. But when you are 437 damage above the surge threshold, your rotational capabilities are going to tend to be a little bit easier to come by and a little bit more the focus here. Panzer and Yapko, they know better. They don't need to overextend or over-aggress anywhere. Cringe and Volko, on the other hand, though, they might not have a choice. They've got to deal this duo that's decided to challenge them. The problem also being burning through a decent amount of the materials for the mid-game. Sure, they'll be able to make it to the vending, but at the same time here, Lev, these fights that don't tend to go in favor of either side, I mean, sure, you've got the surge to deal with, but you're also just kind of losing time to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, I think that's why it's important for a team like this, where, you know, one of their biggest strengths is their ability to box fight, right? And so that's, you know, they want to play to their strengths, but ultimately you need to have the game plan that allows you to recover games, right? And so you see there, having an understanding of where they can get some extra meds to be able to stay alive and stay in the storm, give themselves some extra time. Knowing for Strokey obviously going past on our screens there, I'm sure a lot of people will be hoping those guys can have a good weekend here. Both players were at the Summit Land playing with different people. Strokey, of course, being thrown in a bit last minute there, but we'd love to see them both in it again. And this is the problem, Taco, when you don't quite have Surge figured out, you end up in situations like this, and so is that. And Dan DiPuzzo, still here at Battlewood, still fighting, and finally being able to add 2 to their tally.
Finally getting to finish what they'd started, essentially. Still, probably came a bit more delayed than what they would have liked, but better late than never in some instances. Still allows them the opportunity to try and gauge how many teams are actually in the surrounding areas. Good positioning, though, currently from Medius and Fred. They need a little bit more surge to go with it. And this is very close to where Vico and Malabuka are usually at, but remember, they're already out of this competition after that game 1 success, which is part of the reason why when this zone pulls north, wouldn't be surprised to see more teams trying to look to take advantage of that opened up drop.
Chasing the mustache below and running in towards congestion. Their nade doesn't work. And so now they are really stuck in an awkward spot. Forced to use some of their heals and individually use a nade each. So what should have been 1 nade ends up being 3 used, which isn't often what you want. And still below on Surge and lost some timing. So ultimately the moral of the story here is they're not in a great position, Taco. They're gonna have to dig themselves out of a bit of a hole here.
And right now it just feels like they're clawing at loose dirt too. Everyone else in the lobby trying to shut them off from those opportunities. But Mustache, where there's a will, there's a way. Still looking to see if he can collect on the second alongside Tayson. That first elimination, it is at least going to stem some of the bleeding from their HP off those surge ticks.
And no matter how much time passes in EU, one thing remains true: if Mustache is on your wall, you're in trouble.
Strokey also experiencing that world of trouble, though. Hoping to see them faring a bit better at this point in the lobby, but unfortunately doesn't get a choice, just has to jump straight into a fight. It's against the likes of Cringe and Twy also. Be more than happy to collect some of that siphon material, and not only that, but just a really tough break. First 2 games to kind of disappear from you, but that doesn't mean that there can't be a recovery point at some point later on today. Giannis and Rax doing decent. Giannis probably wishing he didn't lose all of his shield in that instance. Will be forced to stop and heal for a moment, but what they really need is to try and keep a steady lookout, see if they can build up a little bit more surge. Only 86 above from what we last saw. And with some of the shifting elevation that could be introduced pretty soon here based off how the zone pools, that is only going to add further complications for some of these teams that are just hovering above that surge metric.
I was talking to Queasy yesterday, and I was asking him how he felt about the Heat 2 of EU, and he said, hey, don't sleep on my boy Trulex, man. I think Trulex is going to cook up today. And now Trulex sits in pole position to play height for this endgame. And with some of the best players in this lobby in a heap of trouble here, Scroll has already lost Sky and is down on Surge. There is an opportunity here for somebody to come through and steal this game away.
Never takes Scroll long, though, to connect some shots. That accuracy is going to buy him a little bit of time, and undeterred, even as a solo, he'll opt to still try and make his way towards the high ground, understanding that that'll be one of his best opportunities to try and fight, try and avoid some of the lower layer congestion too. Much harder to try and control that frontside low when you are a solo. So instead, from secondary height, trying to gauge whether or not there is going to be another opportunity for a refresh. Pink on her wrist, hovering just outside the mid ground though, just steadily breaking apart here as Fred and Mattias will take out Trulex on the high ground. Faded, left to fend for himself.
That's one of them positions where it almost feels like you're playing some realistics. And in a realistic 1v1 for height between Matt
Hey, big guy, big guy, big guy, big guy. SpongeBob, big guy, pants.
Mateo. Tim Cheese. Tim Cheese. Lerele larela. Flamenguista.